Redditors who have lived in a haunted house, what are your most unexplainable paranormal experiences? My repost from an old thread. I lived in an old, haunted house in college. Things got so weird that everyone moved out except for me and one roommate. Here's a few. I woke up at 3 a.m. because my roommate's door kept opening and slamming shut. From bed, I yelled for him to stop only to realize I was the only one home that weekend. As soon as I yelled, the slamming stopped, but the hippie beads I had hanging outside my closed door began to sway perfectly, yet violently, against the door frame, for a half hour, while I debated if I should pop out my air condition unit and jump out of the window. I laid in the fetal position in bed till it stopped. 2. I woke up at 3 a.m., alone again, hearing the Nintendo in the back porch playing loudly. I figured a drunk kiddie came in and started playing. I grabbed a bat and walked towards the back of the house as the music got louder and louder. As soon as I opened the door, it was completely quiet. Mind you, it was loud enough to wake me up. 3. I had friends over and told them the house was haunted. No one believed me, so I asked the ghost to do anything to prove it was there. As soon as I asked, all the lights in the house began flickering for about a minute straight. This was the middle of the day, everyone witnessed it. 4. Almost everyone who stayed at my house had sleep paralysis at least once in the house. 5. Every time something spooky happened, the house would smell like old lady, flowery, strong perfume. 6. This house had a door built into the flooring that led to the basement. We always had a rug covering it up so no one knew it was there. Things would constantly go missing in the house, and turning up in the basement. This house had a coal chute from when it was heated by coal back in the day. Missing stuff would always be placed on the chute for us to come and get. 7. Roommate had some issues. Once while playing video games late at night, he saw mist kind of hovering from the kitchen then move into the bathroom. The bathroom had a trapdoor that led to the attic. That's where we figured the old lady ghost used to like to hang out. 8. Roommate was up late. He went to go lock the doors and turn off lights. When he turned his back on the room and walked to the door, someone breathed into his ear. Ha! He thought it was me. I was sleeping. He turned around, pissed himself, and ran to his room. He thought it was me. I was sleeping. He turned around, pissed himself, and ran to his room. He was too afraid to come out and turn off lights and TV. 9. Loud thumps in attic at all hours. For peace of mind, we told ourselves squirrels must have gotten in there. 10. Voices would wake us up in the middle of the night. I spent many mornings on the front porch waiting for the sun to come up before I went back in the house. 11. Coincidentally, I had a friend years later that rented from the same landlord, same town, different house, where he and all of his roommates moved out because that house was also haunted. I didn't think it was too weird, until he was telling me that when all of the weird stuff happened, it was accompanied by old lady, flowery, stanky perfume. Also, a lot of people had sleep paralysis in that house as well. Edit. Lots of comments about sleep paralysis. I got them more than anyone in the house. Never had one again in my life after moving out. Edit 2. The basement just kind of trailed off. I actually never explored the whole thing. F that. The washer and dryer were by the stairs, then there's a gap until you reach the coal stuff, then behind that was just dark. Missing stuff was like TV remote, eyeglasses, Xbox controller, etc. Edit 3. Lots of comments about mold in the AC causing hallucinations. I guess that's possible. The only reason I doubt it is because the AC was in my bedroom, while the most vivid effing sleep paralysis I had was actually during the day after a nap on the couch in the living room. Also, I used the AC in other apartments since with no issues. I lived in a house for about 5 years that was haunted, but not in a malicious way. In a shitty roommate kind of way. I'd come home to the windows on the second floor being open when it was raining. to food containers being open in the fridge that I hadn't touched yet. The worst was that the ghost hated clocks. She hated them. I had antique cuckoo clocks that had worked for 50 years that would just stop. Brand new wall clocks that ate through batteries like it was candy. My watch ended up on the floor one morning, the crystal shattered, even though I knew I slept with it on. The one that pissed me off the most was that I got a brand new Kit Kat clock for Christmas, and the bee threw it off the wall. I was cooking and out of corner of my eye saw the cat freaking fly. Turned around and it was across the kitchen. Broken. It was brand new. Man, she was a bee. My uncle's house out on a very eastern part of NY was said to be haunted due to the family that used to own it in the 1800s decided not to give it to the stableman and sold it instead. He and the maid were said to have haunted the place. We always used to joke that you would hear people or things moving at night, but since the house is so old, we used to just laugh it off. My uncle's friend had her and her sister stay over the house one night, and the friend noticed a maid bringing towels down the stairs when she woke. She saw the maid again, bringing what looked like a percolator down the stairs. She asked where the maid went and she thought that the maid was cooking breakfast. My uncle had no idea what she was talking about and asked what she looked like. The sister explained and he laughed. Walked her to the living room and pointed to an old picture. She said that was the woman. My uncle replied, "Yeah, she has been dead for about 100 years. My grandparents have a helpful ghost too. Their house was built in the 1860s and they've lived in it since the late 1960s. Over the years, various family members have heard the vacuum cleaner turn on its own, and clothes and towels that were dropped on the floor before bed have been folded and placed at the foot of the bed by morning." In an intense burst of procrastination one day, I looked up every mention of their address in the town's online newspaper archives and found out that the family that built the house had a daughter who grew up there, never married, and took care of her widowed father until she later died of old age. So I figure the helpful ghost is just the daughter continuing to take care of people like she did for her entire life. I watched one of our cats being pulled backwards about 5 feet by her tail. She was walking through the dining area and suddenly was sliding backwards, as if someone was pulling her by her tail. Only there wasn't. She freaked out and tried to run, but couldn't immediately as something held on for a brief second before letting her go. I tend to think that was the handiwork of a 4 or 5-year-old girl ghost who hangs out and she just wanted to play with the kitty. I lived in a house that seemed to be haunted by doppelgangers. Every event that happened never involved some mysterious figure, but a known person being in a place where they should not have been. Here are a few examples. I was a teenager at the time, and I was instant messaging my GF at the time with my webcam turned on. I had the viewer up so that I could see myself in the webcam. Behind me, there was the stairs leading up left of camera view, and the entrance to the living room right of camera view. Behind me, there was the stairs leading up left of camera view, and the entrance to the living room right of camera view. My younger sister would typically fall asleep every night on the couch in front of the TV and make her way up to bed in the middle of the night. At one point in my webcam view, I saw my sister leave the living room and go up the stairs. The thing that struck me as odd was that I didn't hear anything. It was an older Victorian house, so the wooden floor and stairs were loud AF. Without saying anything to my GF, I got up and looked into the living room, and there was my sister passed out on the couch. I sat back down and asked my GF if she had seen anything in my camera. She said, "Yeah, I just saw your sister go upstairs. My family was all getting ready to go somewhere. I was sitting in the car with my mom and we were waiting on my sister who was still in the house. After a bit she comes out and gets in the car and just looks at me like WTF. I ask her what's wrong and she says that just before she walked out of the house she thought I was still inside, so she yelled up the stairs, 1LT_0 we're leaving. And apparently I yelled back, okay, I'll be down in a minute. Edit. Some more examples since many people have asked. I did put some of these in a response lower, but I allowed them here for visibility. 1. My mom woke up to someone tapping her foot and she said someone was standing at the end of her bed who faded out after a couple seconds. She said it looked like me. 2. I had an encounter where I woke up and felt like someone was under my covers laying up against me. When I said something, my blanket visibly deflated and I no longer felt anything. I include this with doppelgangers because though I didn't see what I felt under the blanket, it laid like my GF would have laid against me. 3. When I was 22 I was in the military and I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. It still took like a year after the diagnosis to separate from the military, but I went home on leave for the holidays about a month after the diagnosis. Anyone that has insulin-dependent diabetes typically carries around some sort of kit. Mine is black zip-up pouch and it has a glucometer, insulin pen, needles, and alcohol pads. Right after I left home to head back from leave, my mom texts me to ask if I'm missing my diabetic kit. I look, and I'm not. She sends me a picture of a diabetic kit and asks if I know it. I've never seen this kit before in my life. Apparently, my sister went into her bedroom and discovered it outside of her window propped up like someone had set it there. Oh, also, her bedroom is on the 2nd floor. Nobody else we know has diabetes. When I was around 9 to 10 years old, I remember waking up to see a large shadow stood at the foot of my bed. I was living with my dad at the time. He has a very large 5 floors terrace house built in the 1800s. Every so often there would be an unexplainable event happen, such as footsteps when there's no one there or voices. On the night this happened, it was just my dad and I in the house. My sister was staying with my mum at the time. I woke up and noticed the door to my room was wide open. I normally sleep with it closed. I then became aware of a large, around 7 feet tall, shadow-like figure watching me from the end of the bed. When the figure noticed me, it seemed to melt into the floor and the door to my room slammed shut. Understandably, I was slightly traumatized by the whole experience. Asked my dad the next day if he was in my room and he denied any knowledge of the event. He's not the type of person that likes jokes. There's a post about this somewhere on Reddit that I wrote before, but I'm too lazy to dig it up. My husband and I own a martial arts school, and the building that it's in, which we also own, is about 130 years old. Next to a church. And I never, and still don't really, there has to be another explanation, believed in the paranormal, but the things that happened in it didn't just happen to me. It was decrepit, which was why it was so cheap to purchase, and we basically did all the work ourselves, old, creaky, and drafty. Still knob and tube that we had to get an electrician to change out. So here's a bunch of things that happened. 1. When we'd be working with like drills and electric saws, I'd hear the tinkling of a music box, and I'd stop everyone to ask if they hear it too. No one else did, so I assumed it must have been some music from the church coming through. 2. My husband would often hear a woman's voice calling his name from the bottom of the stairs. It's 2 floors, a basement, and a loft, and, thinking it was me back from work, would always ask it to come up. Turns out the building was empty. Happened 4 or 5 times. 3. One night, there's a small apartment on the 2nd floor connected to a large hall. We woke up hearing what sounded like a broom sweeping across the wooden floors in the large hall. My husband got up to go check, but once he would walk in there, the sweeping sound would stop. It happened 3 more times that night. We chalked it up to mice or squirrels. We did find mummified squirrels in the attic once. 4. We had a barbecue in the backyard and I needed to go get more utensils. There's a metal stairwell from the backyard up to the second floor, and then there's the main entrance staircase opposite to that. I came up the main entrance and heard footsteps pacing back and forth across the far end of hall and thought my husband came up from the metal stairwell to get utensils with me. It was dark and I couldn't see anything. I called out for him and the pacing stopped. No response, and then the pacing footsteps continued. Annoyed, I thought he was messing with me, so I flipped on the lights and all of the utensils from the shelf where I heard the pacing crash down to the floor, like I spooked something. But there wasn't anything, not even a rat like I thought there might be. 5. One Saturday morning, my husband was on his computer in another room. I'm in the apartment playing with the Tamagotchi app on my iPad when I heard the stereo sitting in front of me click on and a girl's voice started talking from it. I thought he controlled the stereo from his computer, so I ignored it because he often puts on music to work out before class started. He teaches the morning class. I do remember thinking, what kind of weird-ass indie music is he listening to anyway? Because the voice just said, "Hi, my name is..." I thought I heard Katie, but I'm not 100% sure because I wasn't paying attention. I have never known a Katie in my life. I'm blank years old. I'm from blank, etc. I didn't catch the specifics because I wasn't really listening, but that went on for about 2 or 3 minutes until it suddenly went, "Something's hurting me." And when I caught that, I looked up and squinted at the stereo, like, what? Something's killing me. Something killed me. At this point the hair is standing on the back of my neck and I'm getting up from the couch to take a closer look. Please, someone tell my parents, tell the teachers, tell the corrections officer. At the word corrections officer, I just bolt into the other room and start yelling at my husband and cursing him out because I was certain he was playing a trick on me. Told him, we don't effing play jokes about dead people. And he's of course looking at me like WTF. When he finally calms me down long enough to get what I heard out of me and what I was accusing him of, he told me it was impossible and led me to the stereo. It's not plugged in. I thought maybe the stereo picked up the signals from an e-book or something. So after that last fiasco, I went to ask our live-in student who lived with his GF in the basement apartment of the building if anything weird's happened. They shot each other in alarmed look and told me this. 1. His GF was sleeping one night when he was working overnight and she heard footsteps come down the stairs and the door open and then close. All of a sudden a bright flashlight shines in her face and she can just make out the silhouette of who she thought was her BF because he's tall and she can see the dirty jeans he's wearing. She's annoyed thinking he's messing with her, so she's swatting at him and telling him to stop. Finally she gets so pissed off she rolls, turns on their lamp and there's no one there. 2. They sometimes hear footsteps on the first floor when there's no one in the building. They had a pet mouse at the time and whenever that happened it would start doing backflips in its tank. However, when class is going on and there are people in the building, the mouse didn't care and just went about its mousy business. 3. They were play wrestling one day when suddenly, their African grey parrot ruffled its feathers and in a really alarmed voice asked, "Who's there? Who's there?" They thought it was funny at first, so our student looked at the bird and pointed to the door and said, "You mean over here?" and ran towards the door to open it. As he did that, all the books that were lining the shelf on the way to the door fell over in front of him and the lights started flickering. The bird and the mouse both got spooked and were throwing themselves against their cages. Our second live-in student after the first one got married to his GF, got their own home, had a baby several times, could just not find his phone when he woke up in the morning when he had placed it next to his bed the night before. He would search his room high and low and then he'd find it perfectly placed right outside his locked bedroom door on the floor. I thought he might have been sleepwalking, but his GF says she'd realize it if he did since she's a very light sleeper. So don't know what that's about. Nothing notable has happened since then, but we have also not had anyone stay there overnight in years. Edited to add for all the similar questions. 1. I only looked into it very slightly because again I am more inclined to believe it's just the stereo picked up an e-book someone was listening to. However, for all you ghost hunters out there, feel free to look it up in the About Me page of my food blog, which is in my profile. There's a link to the school which includes the address. Have fun, let me know if you find anything exceptionally creepy. 2. Since it was such an old building and we did most of the work ourselves, as in there was no functional bathrooms or anything, and I can now later like a pro, it could have been hallucinogenic mold that affected everyone. 3. I had, some years prior to this, had a week of hallucinating people who weren't there and spiders, which had increasingly insane colors, but they were also tactile hallucinations because I felt them on my hand as well. I otherwise have no issues and those symptoms never occurred again after that bizarre week. Sorry, it could be we all had some hallucinations. When I was younger, I used to take naps upstairs, but by the time I was 8 years old I absolutely refused to go upstairs. The upstairs had 2 large closets. Attics. They ran from one side of the upstairs all the way to the other side on both sides. It was essentially a crawl space that was maybe 30 feet long. It started one day when a friend and I went crawling from one side to the other with flashlights like kids normally do. Then I saw a girl sitting there in the corner acting like she wanted to play with us. I know a lot of people say when they see a ghost they aren't scared. Just interested. Nope, I was beyond terrified. This girl looked normal, had blonde hair, a nice dress, and seemed friendly. I stayed silent, kept crawling behind my friend and got out of the closet. Told him what I saw in there. He said he didn't see it but felt like he didn't want to go back in. Then my parents would occasionally send me upstairs to get something, and when I would get up there I would see the doors swing open, as if they were trying to get me to come inside. I would lose toys and wouldn't be able to find them anywhere. Suddenly, my parents would be fishing out Christmas presents out of the attic and we would find some of my toys in there. I remember being 8 years old, my parents are asleep still in the morning and I leashed up my dog to go take on the monster in the attic. My dog, usually up for anything, refused to go off the top step into the attic. My parents never believed me with all the weird things that happened in that house. I would get blamed for things that happened all over the house. Leaving lights on, toys all over, things I knew I didn't do. Well, anyway, we move out of there when I am 10. Not a week passes before the new owners call us up and ask if the house is haunted. Their daughter sleeps upstairs. She says that she has been playing with a blonde-haired girl at night. My parents laughed at how crazy these new homeowners must be. To make an already long story short, the girl started appearing in other parts of the house for them. They kept in contact with us. They would look over while watching TV and see the girl sitting on their daughter's lap, etc. They looked up on the computer the past owners of the house, found an old dressmaker that lived there, and yep, a picture of the little girl wearing one of the ladies' dresses. The family that moved in there were absolutely torn apart by the events. Got divorced, dad stayed living in the house and ended up taking his own life in that house. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. New videos released daily. Leave a comment below and let us know what Reddit content you would like us to cover next.